Hello everybody, welcome back to Gooner Fanzine TV. Dan Mountain here with Leif, and we're here to talk about the sad passing of a former Arsenal assistant manager, Theo Foley. Leif, you started watching Arsenal kind of when George Graham came in and Theo Foley came in as well. Just explain to us a bit about Theo Foley and his time at Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I started watching Arsenal in the early 80s under Terry Neal, and there wasn't much going on after three successive FA Cup finals from 78, 79, 80, and obviously Cup Winners' Cup in 80, which we lost to Valencia, we lost the Cup final to West Ham in 1980. From then till about 1986, there was literally nothing going on with Arsenal. That was when I started watching them. They were, by far not the greatest team the world has ever seen, and it wasn't much entertainment either. I remember seeing 4-0 in a row once, which was, if you cross the halfway line, sometimes that was a bonus basically. And season 85-86 was a particular low because Don Howe had taken over from Terry Neal in '83, and basically the club wanted Terry Venables, and they sort of tapped him up, and he went public. And Don Howe was a very, very dignified, very, very good man, very honourable man, very honest man. And he was absolutely gutted and devastated that Arsenal had gone behind his back to tap up Terry Venables. And obviously Terry Venables wasn't an Arsenal man anyway. So there was a lot of disgruntlement there. Fans were revolting as well. I remember we played Watford twice in 2 days over Easter. We lost 3-0 at Watford and 2-0 at Highbury. And then it was a really, really bad feeling around. So come to that summer, to just get a bit of context, in May 1986, Arsenal at a really, really low point. Donna had walked out. Steve Burtonshaw, coach, had taken over, sort of steered Arsenal to 6th or 7th, but there was obviously no European football or anything like that. There was nothing going on. Half the games weren't even televised back then. It was a completely different era. Mm-hmm. And then from out of nowhere, George Graham was appointed, basically. He'd been at Millwall for 2 or 3 seasons, done really well there in terms of, having no budget, building up a young side. I think Teddy Sheringham was there at the time. And obviously George Graham's number 2 was Theo Foley. Theo Foley was basically George Graham's, go-to man for he was sort of buffer between George Graham and the team, basically, whatever team that was. And he'd obviously done great work at Millwall. George Graham got appointed. Theo came in. He was a really, really lovely man, an ebullient man, a real football man, a true, passionate man who no one ever had a bad word to say, basically. I remember that season when they first took over, he just loved being at Arsenal. I remember bunking off school to get tickets for an away game, and where the marble halls are, the ticket officers used to be next to them, and the marble halls were there, and the steps were down. I remember just queuing up, and Theo Foley came bounding out the marble halls, literally down the stairs, and he just boomed, "Hello!" like in his big sort of Irish accent, basically. And as a 13, 14-year-old kid, I was like, blimey, it's Theo Foley. He was an absolute legend then, and he still is now. And that was just to sort of, to encapsulate his love of being at Arsenal, basically. We all know what happened in '87. Arsenal won the Littlewoods Cup. That boosted them for Anfield '89. A couple of seasons later, it gave them real belief that they could go and do things. There was a real convergence of a young squad, a young, hungry manager, a really, really good number 2 as well. Everything came together for Arsenal then. That obviously helped Arsenal win the league in '89 and further successes as well. Theo was integral to that. He was a really, really good number 2 in terms of being a buffer for George Graham. George Graham back then was I think his nickname was there was lots of nicknames, yeah. But I'm not sure you can really print them or mention them. But he was respected. He wasn't loved by the players, although later on he's obviously loved. I've interviewed him. I've been around the players and George Graham, and the love and respect there is now was there at the '89 film a couple of years ago. And, it was there, but at the time, I think the players were really, really fearful of George Graham rather than sort of loving him. There was no players that loved George Graham back then. But Theo, as a number 2, was the buffer. So if you were a player and you got a rollicking off George Graham, you would go to Theo, and he would then build you up again. He'd lift your spirits. He'd basically be George Graham's spokesman, as to say, look, George Graham didn't actually mean that. He wasn't being as sort of severe as it probably sounded. This is what he meant, and he'd big you up. And the players loved Theo for that. They absolutely loved him, and the fans loved him as well. I've been at so many away games when, the team would warm up. You'd be somewhere up north, it'd be freezing cold. Not much sort of hospitality from the home support on or off the pitch, and certainly not outside the ground back then. And Theo would come out, and there'd be a big cheer for Theo, and he'd bring the balls out onto the pitch for the warm up. And the Arsenal fans would be singing, Theo, give us the ball, and he'd throw the ball to the Arsenal fans. Normally it'd be over a fence, because back in the day you'd be stuck in a terrace in front of a fence. That's what the 80s was like. And Theo would throw the ball. It would be so easy for him just to ignore it. But those little things really, really engendered a real spirit and bond between the fans and the coaching staff, including Theo. And he was loved for it. And obviously years later, I had the pleasure to interview him in real detail. I think I talked to him for a couple of hours for an interview with the Gooner, which we've reprinted in our fanzine on the website now. But basically, his son Paul, who sadly passed in April, he took a couple of years writing a book, and it was called Theo Gives the Ball, basically, because that was in honour of the fans loving Theo for throwing the ball to him in warm-ups and stuff. So, and everyone I've talked to since Theo's passing as well, former players, fans as well, old school fans, everyone is absolutely gutted. I know Theo was 83 and that's a good innings, but he was a good man. He was a lovely man. He was a true football man, and he was a true Arsenal man as well. And it's a real tragedy that he's sadly passed. And that's the Theo. When you think of Theo Foley, you think of a smile, basically. You think of a really happy man. You think of a man who loves being at Arsenal.
Yeah. He obviously left the club in 1990. How important was he to that success beforehand? And do you think, Arsenal would have won the League Cup, as you mentioned, and the league title in '89 if he wasn't there?
Very good question, Dan. That team was a brilliant team. George Graham was a brilliant manager. But it was the sum of every part, basically. And Theo contributed to that by being there, by being his bubbly self, by contributing to the team spirit. Because George Graham, I remember after, if you're going to sort of go into detail about May the 26th, 1989, the week before, West Ham had lost 5-1 to Liverpool. If they'd have lost 2-1, Arsenal would have needed a draw to win the title at Anfield. They absolutely capitulated, lost 5-1, and that meant Arsenal basically needed to win by 2 goals. The 5-1, if it had been 2-1, they would need to win by a goal, basically. Yeah. 5-1, they needed to be win by 2 goals. And the last time Arsenal had won at Anfield, the last time they won by 2 goals was in 73-74. And those Liverpool sides did not lose back then. And talking to players like Lee Dixon and Alan Smith and a few others as well over the years, they said George Graham came in the next day after that West Ham debacle at Liverpool, and he just said, "Yeah, we're going to win 2-0. We're going to go in 0-0 at half time, and we're going to get 2 goals in the second half." And you've interviewed Lee Dixon as well, and all the players going, "Yeah, what are you on about? This is not And Theo was integral to that because he gave the players belief as well. George Graham was, issuing these sort of this dictum that Arsenal were going to win. Theo sort of sugarcoated it in a sort of jokey way to say, look, we can do this, and the players were looking at George Graham, looking at Theo. Bob Wilson said it as well. I know you've interviewed Bob too. We've both sort of interviewed a lot of Arsenal legends, and the feeling from that camp in that week was, blimey, we might have a chance. And Theo was absolutely integral to that, just as he was for the Littlewoods Cup success as well. I don't know if Arsenal wouldn't have won at Anfield if it wasn't for Theo Foley being part of that side, but it certainly didn't harm him by being there. It certainly added another layer of positivity to that squad that week that helped them get over the line, basically. And if you go back to '87 at Wembley, the Littlewoods Cup final when Arsenal beat Liverpool 2-1, Ian Rush had never, when Ian Rush had scored for Liverpool, they'd never lost a game ever. Fact, this is like the great Liverpool side. People talk about Liverpool side now, the champions, and they are a great side. But but the Liverpool sides of the 80s were just as good, if not better, in certain vintages. And if you look at the photos after the game, Theo Foley's in there in the mix in the celebrations. He's got his daft Arsenal hat on. He's basically doing a jig. He's got the trophy. He's got his arms around people. He's hugging people. Same at Anfield '89. There's that really iconic photo by Mark Leach, who runs Offside Sports Photography, and I know Mark, and he's a great bloke as well, brilliant photographer, and he basically captured Theo hugging Mickey Thomas and vice versa in moments after that victory, and that's how much it meant. Mickey Thomas was obviously, as we all know, got the winner, got the goal that clinched the title for Arsenal basically, and Mickey Thomas sought out Theo amongst others to basically say, we did it. We all did it together, and that's how important Theo Foley was basically. And if you look at social media as well, players like Mickey Thomas, who I just mentioned, was absolutely devastated. He tweeted stuff. Alan Smith, Lee Dixon, Kevin Campbell, all of them loved Theo to a man. No one's ever had a bad word to say about Theo Foley. And I say when I interviewed him for the Gooner, the line was, once an Arsenal man, always an Arsenal man. I think is my favourite quote when I was actually talking to him, and you could feel the tone in his voice. It was like, it was a few years ago now, but it was like 20 odd years. It never happened. It was like he was back at Highbury, and he basically said, I loved every second of being at Arsenal. The Arsenal as well, he said. The definitive article was the Arsenal. I loved every second of being at the Arsenal. It was like a fairy tale for me. And that's good enough for me. That's good enough for the players. It's good enough for every Arsenal fan base. He loved it. He loved being at Arsenal. In terms of him leaving the club, George Graham was ruthless, and he wanted a different number two. And I wouldn't say it broke Theo Foley's heart, but it certainly made him really, really disappointed about leaving. I think nowadays, because the club back then was a completely different creature to what it is now, I think there would have been a role for him somewhere. Whether it be, kit man or anything, basically, that Theo would have stayed at Arsenal. They would have retained him. There was no personality clashes. There was nothing. No, they didn't fall out. There was nothing. There was nothing that sort of led to that point. George Graham just wanted a different number two. Whereas now, if George Graham was in charge, they would have found another role for Theo, and Theo would have been at the club for a lot longer. And it did hurt him, but he was a very, very dignified bloke always. And when I interviewed him, there was no hint of bitterness there. There was no anger. Certainly, there was nothing apart from a little bit of a sense of disappointment that he left the club of his dreams, the club of his life, basically. And that's football. People move on all the time, but I think it did break his heart in leaving, basically. And it wasn't down to him; it was George Graham's decision. But as I say, it wasn't a personality clash. He didn't fall out. Theo did nothing wrong. It was just George Graham wanted a different number two. But Theo was an absolute legend. Absolute legend.
Yeah, as you say, an absolute legend, and all of that amounts to going down in Arsenal's history as one of the greats, an unsung hero, basically. Arsenal are going to honour him on Wednesday, aren't they, against Norwich, which will be really good to see as well.
Yeah, definitely. Very good point there, Dan. It's. I was up at the game at Bramall Lane on Sunday, and I sort of tweeted on Monday, maybe Arsenal should have worn some black armbands, but there was there was information coming out that the club were going to mark his sad passing on Wednesday against Norwich at the Emirates with black armbands and potentially a minute's silence as well. I think there's going to be a bigger feature in the Leicester programme, which is obviously next week. I think deadlines and things like that meant that they couldn't actually honour him as much as they wanted to for the programme against Norwich. But Arsenal are good at that sort of stuff. They're good at marking their own. They're good at honouring their own. And maybe they should have worn black armbands at Sheffield United, but they're certainly going to wear them against Norwich on Wednesday night, and deservedly so, because, as you say, Theo was a legend. He's part of the team, part of the squad, part of the backroom staff that won the title at Anfield '89. And I remember again when I was talking to him the other year when I was interviewing him, he sort of talked about, I set him up and I sort of said, Man City QPR, that was a decent finish, wasn't it? He just the joy in his voice. He was like, "Oh, you're joking, aren't you?" I mean, that was a close finish, but you'll never get a closer finish than Arsenal Anfield '89. Not in 100 years of league football. That was his quote to me. So he'll be watching down from above basically tomorrow night, and I think he'll be very proud that Arsenal will mark his sad passing, and deservedly so as well, because he is an Arsenal legend, like you say.
Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned that book earlier, Theo, Give Us a Ball, brilliant read if you do want to find out more about Theo's life, and make sure to give Leif's interview with him a read. That's up on the Gooner Fanzine Gooner Fanzine website at the moment. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Obviously, a sad topic to talk about, but it is only right to honour an Arsenal legend like Theo Foley.